What's up everyone, it's Endymion, and for the past day and a bit I've been enjoying my time with Diablo 4's early access. I chose the Barbarian because the class personifies what I look for in video games. Big weapons, big muscles, and big damage. You could say I'm having a good time playing the game right now. Although, as I mosey through Sanctuary, cleansing the world of vile scum, I decided to look at the store, and I was met with amazement. Right out of the gate, Diablo 4 is full of cosmetics and microtransactions ready to prey on players' wallets as they play. Some of the sets look pretty cool, but it turns out Diablo 4 might just become Blizzard's greediest game yet. For the Barbarian alone, you have a few options with ranging prices from $1,400 internet nonsense dollars to $2,400, and some are even $2,800. Anyway, how much is 2,400 points worth in Diablo? Well, since you can't buy the exact amount you need, because of course you can't, in order to buy this one set for your Barbarian, you'll have to buy the 2,800 currency bundle, which is $34 Canadian. Or if you want a closer amount of points, you could go for the 1,000 currency twice and then 500 once, but that would also cost you $34. So naturally, Blizzard wants you to spend the $34 outright, and they'll give you an extra 300 smekles to spend on the shop. Anyway, this means that this one skin in Diablo 4 costs roughly $24 Canadian, which is absolutely insane. While I understand games are more expensive than they've ever been and companies need ways to monetize their games over an extended period of time, this practice of paying literally entire indie game prices for a single skin is just ridiculous. Diablo 4, if you don't buy into early access and just wait for its official release, will cost you $80 Canadian. And depending on your province, the taxes will cuck you even further. In Alberta, where I live, Diablo 4 would cost me around $83, $84-ish Canadian. Whereas in Ontario, their taxes are like 13% or something insane, so you're looking at mid-90s for Diablo 4. Anyway, the point is that if you buy this single skin in Diablo, it costs roughly a third of the price of the entire game right now. How the hell does one skin cost a third of an open world action RPG with so many systems, cinematics, and endgame systems? How can you look at this and go, yeah, this is worth $24? The obvious answer is greed, of course, but it still sucks all the same. So, I decided to spend a few minutes of my day calculating how much would it cost to buy everything in Diablo 4's cash shop right now at release. Surely it can't be that much, right? Currently, as of the making of this video, there's 27 items within Diablo 4's cash shop, with ranging prices from $800 nonsense dollars to $2,800 for others. So, how much is it? With the power of math at my disposal, and by that I mean I just used a calculator on my phone, the total amount of points required to buy everything in Diablo 4 right now is 40,600 Blizzard dollars. In terms of what all of this would cost you, it would be roughly $472.47 Canadian to buy everything on the game store right now, or about 5.9 times the price of the base game at release. So if you were to buy every cosmetic and obviously the game in order to play it, right now you'd spend around $552.47 in total on launch day for all of the content in Diablo 4. As you can imagine, that sounds disgusting and borderline insane, and I already know some of you watching this bought some of this stuff, didn't you? You know who you are, I don't want to shame you too much, but one of those skins is like double the price of indie classics like Hollow Knight, which just doesn't sit well with me at all. Of course, your obvious argument will be, well, these are entirely optional and do not affect the game in any way, which yes, you're right to a certain degree. However, this is just getting worse as time goes on with how fast the AAA games industry is growing. In a game like Fortnite, I understand that it needs some way to make money since the game is free to play, even if I don't agree that free-to-play games often ask for Diablo 4 prices or beyond in some cases with how expensive they are. Apparently in Valorant, there are skins that cost around $80, which is insane to me. How can this one skin in Valorant cost as much as the entirety of Final Fantasy XVI? Make it make sense, you can't, but you're welcome to try. Obviously, when it comes to modern games, they will mostly all have some sort of monetization. But in a game like Diablo 4's case, the game isn't free to play, it's $80. There's no moral standing here where a game that costs full price should be asking for entire indie game prices for a single set of armor. I understand why they do this, it's because companies love making revenue on the kinds of players who are often called whales. These players are basically the ones who buy the majority of microtransactions in games, with stories aplenty of sad consumers who spend their entire life savings on some free-to-play game. But the fact this skin in Diablo 4 is basically twice the price of Hollow Knight or so just doesn't sit right with me at all. It's also why, in case you haven't noticed, but many games these days don't release as many expansions as they did in the past. In the old days of gaming, and by that I mean like the early 2000s to the very early 2010s, games usually got expansions after they released. Think the Shivering Isles for Oblivion or smaller DLCs like Lair of the Shadow Broker for Mass Effect 2. While these sorts of expansions are awesome, the reality is that not only are they big content drops, they also cost a lot of money to make. And the sad reality is that expansions aren't usually bought as often as the base game, meaning a lot of the dev time and money gets spent to create these things, but it's largely true to assume that not everyone who bought the game will buy the expansion. So companies are forced into a situation where they have to look at the real life stats of what things cost and what actually makes money. Do you get 100 plus devs to work on an expansion for $30 to $40 and have maybe 25 to 40% of your audience buy the expansion at release? Or do you take those 100 devs and order them to make hundreds of cosmetic items for various prices from $5 all the way up to $80 in some cases? Which, oh my god, I still can't wrap my head that something costs that much. But anyway, the obvious answer here from a practical standpoint is that the microtransactions will likely make more money in the long run than a single massive expansion will. And if the expansion flops and less players buy the DLC, that's when studios start laying off people. But if a $5 sword or whatever fails, it's not as big of a deal since the work it took to make one sword is obviously going to cost way less time and money than entire expansions. This is why so many games these days have structure models that involve concepts like seasons and battle passes. Of course, these drops are smaller but can be made more frequently and stretched in order to please player bases for months at a time. Then alongside these seasons, games always have a few bundle packs of cosmetics to drop alongside it, oftentimes with the bundles costing more than the actual season pass itself. Many games do this, with Destiny 2 being a prime example of this, and I fully expect Diablo 4 to do the same as well. Thankfully, at its core, Diablo 4 is a fun game with a lot of content. As of right now anyway, it runs very well, it looks great, and looks to have many systems in place to keep players coming back. But it still pushes the very real threat that is the over-monetization of gaming these days. In my opinion, if your game costs full price, it shouldn't have microtransactions. Jedi Survivor was full price at release and had no weird add-ons that I know of anyway, but unfortunately that's not the norm these days. As time goes on, Diablo 4 will obviously get way more content bundles down the line, to the point where I wouldn't be surprised if most of the best looking sets are behind paywalls at some point. It also doesn't make much sense having these bundles cost so much when Diablo 4 is a top-down action RPG to begin with. You can barely see what your character looks like most of the time anyway. At least for me, I can't see what my boots look like when I'm whirlwind smashing some vile hellspawns to death. Activision Blizzard in general these days is one of the most lopsided companies in gaming. I mean, for solid triumphs of game design and quality like Diablo 4, the same company will churn out disappointments like Overwatch 2 as well. Which is yet another game full of cosmetics, and no, I can't show you the cash shop in that game because I deleted Overwatch 2 off my hard drive months ago, and I never plan to go back, to be honest with you. And I know what I'm saying here is kind of doom and gloom, but it's sadly the grim reality. I mean, look at Overwatch 2. The entire existence of that game was promised on a massive single-player mode for the game. It was basically going to be the Diablo answer to Overwatch with replayable levels, skill trees, and new abilities for every hero, but like I said earlier in this video, why don't companies have expansions as much as they used to? The answer is what happened to Overwatch, unfortunately. The game mode wasn't cancelled because it wasn't fun or innovative. Apparently, it was all of those things and more. Hell, they even flew out content creators to play the single-player mode as well. But the real reason why it was cancelled wasn't because it was in development hell, but because the mode cost too much dev time and couldn't be monetized in a way that would justify its own existence. So the reason why Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2 are games of consequence that both have quality and also have the most bullshit microtransactions in modern gaming is simply chalked up to corporate greed and the monolithic machine known as capitalism. Why spend money and the time of hundreds of devs making a single player mode that would please everyone and give us tons of goodwill, when we could force those same devs to just make skins for the rest of eternity as our player base dwindles? Ultimately, the obvious reason is just that. It's greed. It always has been and it always will be. But never mind that, guys. Don't worry that it costs over $500 to get everything in Diablo or that Overwatch 2's single player mode is cancelled, because it's Pride Month. Which means it's the right time for Overwatch 2 to push other news stories and pander to their super gay inclusive franchise that's totally not designed that way on purpose in order to hide its corporate greedy structure.
Just consume product.
When Overwatch 2 isn't disappointing its fans by canceling a single player mode or pushing insane bundles on players, it also wants you to know that Blizzard hates police. In the month of corporate pandering, Blizzard has removed all police cars from the Midtown multiplayer map and added more rainbows. Apparently it's because police officers are not welcome in the LGBTQ+ community, and the thought of having a peacemaking force being tied to woke gay ideologies is poison in the eyes of Blizzard. Because nothing says pandering like removing the peacekeeping force presence within a woke franchise about a peacekeeping force called Overwatch that polices the world from the rise of robot monsters. The hypocrisy, as you'd imagine, is off the charts here. How can Overwatch hate police officers when the literal concept of Overwatch is to be the very same police officers but on a global scale? The only way Blizzard can rectify this is by removing Overwatch from Overwatch itself. After all, if you hate institutions that protect people and control them, my sisters and brothers in Christ, your literal game is about those same people. The only difference is your officers not only shoot and kill people without remorse, but they wear pride flags while doing so.
How does it feel to have lived long enough to see all of your favorite franchises go down in flames?
Feels great.
Corporate shilling. Don't you love Pride Month? You can just taste the hypocritical, nonsensical taint in the air. All the shilling and reverse victim tactics are on full display in June, and I am here for it. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. Diablo 4's monetization is greedy as hell, and Overwatch is a sinking ship built upon the woke ideologies of people who are just as hypocritical as the game they make. Blizzard really is one of the most confusing companies out there, and it's tiring to see such easy slam dunks getting shortchanged by corporate greed and woke tactics. Thank you for watching, like the video to help the channel out, and subscribe to keep up to date on all the nonsense in the gaming and entertainment world. Now, if you'll excuse me, I got a date with demons, but I'll just use the cosmetics in the game because there's no way in hell I'm paying $24 for a skin. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.